Terrence Malick is one of the most mysterious and elusive Hollywood figures we've ever had, and he's probably one of the most widely respected directors working today. And you don't have to take my word for it. Just ask anyone in Hollywood. Christopher Nolan, David Fincher, even J.J. Abrams recently have all tossed him tremendous praise, many of them admitting that he has been one of the major influences on their own filmmaking. And I'd also be willing to bet that just about any actor would be ready to drop everything to get a chance to work with him, to at least just have that singular Malick experience on set. But despite all the love and respect he gets, this guy remains a ghost. No interviews, no public appearances, and consistently a no-show at award ceremonies. In my opinion, his first 5 movies, Badlands, Days of Heaven, The Thin Red Line, The New World, and The Tree of Life are all indisputable masterpieces, equally revered for their unparalleled use of beautiful cinematography and natural light, their technical precision, and their philosophical depth. So when a new Malick film is set to come out, cinephiles tend to get antsy with anticipation, and while I'll admit that I didn't really enjoy 2012's To the Wonder, I was still pretty excited to get my hands on Knight of Cups this year. Most Malick fans are aware of his recent approach to filmmaking, at least in terms of his last couple films. Basically, this guy rounds up a bunch of super sexy people, throws them in a beautiful environment, and then just kind of lets the camera roll without hardly any scripting whatsoever. This doesn't mean that these films aren't written out beforehand. Apparently he does do a lot of writing actually, but they're not primarily driven by dialogue in the way most movies are. Now, if you ask me, this approach worked magnificently well with The Tree of Life, most of which really came alive in the editing room, I think. Considering how experimental and impressionistic the film actually was, it still felt cohesive and complete, with all its disparate parts elegantly sewn together by its philosophical themes and religious ideas and use of music. I feel like Malick was also able to elicit some really strong performances from all the actors in that film. Everyone from its leads, such as Brad Pitt and Jessica Chastain, to the kids, on down to even the smaller roles. The imagery of the universe, the natural world, and even the Texas neighborhoods is just gorgeous. In my opinion, the film just works. But now, sadly, Malick seems to be running out of ideas. Either that, or he's just getting lazy, or overconfident, or something, because To the Wonder and now Knight of Cups just don't really offer anything new. In Knight of Cups, Christian Bale plays a screenwriter in Hollywood named Rick. What you basically witness in this film is Rick's existential crisis, his struggle to come to terms with his life and his deteriorating relationships, along with his fight against temptation and sin and his guilt about having turned away from God. Bale literally has maybe one line in the whole film. What you mostly get from him is this whispery voiceover, a common Malick trope, something that I think works really well in movies like The Thin Red Line or The Tree of Life, I think. But here, it's just not enough to keep the movie's engine running. I feel kind of cheated. It's like Malick basically just picked a bunch of really nice locations in LA to film in, gathered his crew, and then just got a bunch of cool shots. Airports, nightclubs, opulent mansions, aquariums, and beaches. And the beaches, my god, I think probably about 30% of this entire film is just devoted to these characters fucking frolicking along the beaches and splashing each other and just playing in the water. Most of the locations in Malick's other films feel distinguished with some kind of purpose or powered by some intellectual conceit or theme. And if none of those things, they at least just take a step back and make room for a good performance.
But this one, I've seen another world. Sometimes I think it was just my imagination.
In The Tree of Life, for example, there are all kinds of analyses and interpretations to be made with its imagery, because all of it seems to have been deliberately placed and edited that way. I'm not saying that Knight of Cups has no depth or is incapable of being dissected and discussed. There are, of course, numerous aspects awaiting interpretation here. My complaint is that the film doesn't provide the viewer with as much motivation to do so this time around. The ideas here just don't fascinate me in the way that they did in something like Tree of Life. Now, in terms of cinematography, as you would expect, the movie delivers in enormous doses. Once again, Malik's right-hand man, Emmanuel Lubezki, who has won an Academy Award for Best Cinematography for the last 3 years in a row, continues to impress with his ability to capture incredible images. But to what effect are these images if not accompanied by something, anything substantive? Many of the shots in Knight of Cups are admittedly amazing, but you're still just left thinking, why? Don't get me wrong, I appreciate style in film, and I don't necessarily think that story is always king. Roger Ebert even once said that it's not what a movie is about, it's how it is about it, an adage that applies to some excellent movies that weren't afraid to emphasize method and style over plot. Knight of Cups, however, along with To the Wonder, just has no backbone. I feel like I'm watching a film student who's just having fun experimenting with his camera. Now, there is another side to that coin, though, something that the art for art's sake hippie in me just cannot ignore, and that's basically the fact that Malik doesn't really seem to give a fuck about what anyone thinks. And it's clear to me that he really just has no interest in trying to appeal to a mass audience. He's probably one of the most honest, genuine filmmakers working today. Somebody who has just been totally unafraid to share his personal journey and spiritualism to his viewers. And from this perspective, all of my complaints are practically irrelevant. I guess what I mean to say is that I can either review this movie and analyze it as a critic would, try to quantify how entertaining or original or effective I thought it was, or I can just take it exactly as it is, which is a deeply honest and profoundly personal art film. Now, I know some people really dislike that term, art film, but I think there is such a thing as a movie that is arguably more of an art piece than it is a straightforward flick you just munch popcorn to. Knight of Cups, like many other experimental art films, feels like it belongs to its own individual universe or something, where the usual laws of film criticism just do not apply. But even with that extra leverage, I still feel that Knight of Cups is just weak and not that gratifying of an experience. It seems to me that Malik needs to get a writer, or he just needs to get more disciplined with his own writing and actually give his actors something to do instead of just standing around awkwardly in a field of wheat or on a beautiful beach or wherever the fuck it is. The writing is strong in Malik's first 5 films, of which he happened to write himself. So I know he can do it, but this recent whimsical and improvisational approach to his movie making, at least with his last 2 projects, is just not cutting it for me anymore. I don't want him to change too much necessarily, I just want him to get out of his own fucking head a little bit and maybe start considering his audience and set his ego aside. I mean, give me something beautiful and challenging and thought-provoking like you always do, but maybe integrate that with something purposeful and engaging. While to an extent, I can appreciate Knight of Cups for its honesty, its spiritualism, its fabulous cinematography, and I also acknowledge that this is meant to be an experimental art film, something impressionistic, I still just have to admit that I simply did not enjoy watching this. It hurts to hear myself say these things because I practically worship Terrence Malick. He's one of my favorite filmmakers, and I'm still looking forward to the many projects he has coming out later this year and next year. But if I'm being totally honest, in my opinion, Knight of Cups just kind of fucking sucks.